Through the generous contribution of Dr. Lewis's family, we're very fortunate to be able to share with you these timeless recordings of Dr. M. W. Lewis, a self-realized American yogi. Dr. Lewis was Paramahansa Yogananda's first American disciple and dearest personal friend. The wisdom Dr. Lewis imparts through these teachings will give you a dynamic and practical insight into the ancient science of yoga as taught by Paramahansa Yogananda. This lecture's title is How to Stay Young and was delivered in San Diego, California on November 22, 1959.
Well, making youth long-lasting. Making youth long-lasting. Or to put it in a few words, how to stay young, isn't it? How to stay young. Well, what is it that grows old? Did you ever stop to think, what is it that grows old? It surely isn't the soul, because the soul we know from the Scriptures and from the teachings of the great saints. The soul is eternal, everlasting, unending, never was born and never can grow old nor die. And so surely it is not the soul consciousness that ages. Well, then what is it that ages? What is it that ages? Did you ever stop to think? It is simply that the soul has become identified with the body consciousness, and it sees that the body changes, is impermanent, and in time passes away. So, your own soul consciousness thinks that it is limited to the body consciousness and under the same influences that it sees going on all around it. That's all it is. It is simply identification of your own soul, a ray of God's presence, with these changing conditions of outward or human consciousness. That's really what happens. Of course, there is a cycle. There is a cycle of the soul's presence in the body which goes on and finally is terminated. But that can be lengthened even if we know the higher laws of God. And surely that cycle can be of a much better nature, so to speak, if we do not allow ourselves, by controlling our minds, to be identified with these changing conditions. That's the important thing to remember. We cannot, under the present conditions, live eternally in this body. Although my master told me one time that if you can live somehow to be 120, I saw a lady the other day in the paper was 120. But if you can do that, then you don't get older after that. Isn't that wonderful? But who can live to the 120? That's what I asked him. He says, that's right. So these things are nice to remember anyway. And some people look old, and some people feel old. Some people look young, and some people feel young. Now, there's a reason for that. Of course, I realize there are inherited tendencies within us that we have brought over. Some have a greater resistance to disease than others. Some have a resistance to wear and tear. You cannot keep them down. But others do not have that resistance. Well, now there is a reason for that. And this is the important thing to remember. Why is it? Why is it that some look old and some look young? And some feel old and some feel young? It is this, that the mind has not accepted these conditions of age. That's all it is. The mind has not accepted these conditions which we call age. And therefore, as the mind and the body are very closely related, if within yourself you have that idea of youth and also really feel it so that the mind picks it up, because the mind can do anything, then the body reacts to the power of the mind and keeps you youthful and cheerful. That is the key. The key is that for some reason, now we must find out that reason, for some reason the mind has not accepted the ordinary change which goes on within as a normal thing. There was a lady I saw at a banquet one time. I went there with the master, and it was some club in Los Angeles, forgotten the name of it now, but it makes no difference. And on the platform was this lady. It had something to do with health and proper eating and such things. And so they had her stand up. Of course, her hair was gray. I guess she thought that was all right. But they asked, "How old do you think the lady is?" Well, there were all kinds of ages. To me, she didn't look 50. And she stood up and said that she was over 80. Now, what was the trouble? Well, what was the reason? Not trouble. What was the reason? The reason was that somehow her mind had not accepted age. And I know I was dumbfounded. And I know that was true because it was under the banquet was under the auspices of a very reliable club.